Us Christians have a problem, in fact several. The most serious and least understood is that we lack a defensible identity. There is a biblical reason for this. Let me assume that as a Christian, you are like me and opposed to a lot of what we see. You are against the left, socialism, and to some degree you are against government, at least its larger, more intrusive form. You might be an anarchist, libertarian, or conservative promoting lower spending, but you think government is at least part of the problem. But if the state is part of the problem and we think Jesus is the solution, there must be something we can measure. If one thing is better than the other, we ought to be able to identify this metric and quantify it. Yet, human beings have tried the same answers for hundreds if not thousands of years. That being said, there is a difference in the type of responses Christians and others make. Those on the right mostly just want to be let alone. We have no faith in these secular institutions. Indeed, for the most part, they are not consistent with our own values. Christians do not like secularism, but we have always been ready to negotiate. But if you want to live in a way that suits you, and not us, go ahead, but stop pushing your agenda like it is the only way to live. But more and more, conservatives are not even allowed to disengage from this system. If we do not actively embrace the beliefs of the left, we are seen as racist, misogynist, and dangerous extremist, politically on the far right. In fact, the left is giving us an identity in lieu of the one we did not create. We who are not on the left are considered to be conservative and Christian. But being a Christian can be a liability, as much as a blessing because of who we have become associated with. Christianity varies from the fundamental evangelist to liberal churches, led by lesbian ministers. The fact that the left is entering our space and creating women-led congregations that double as civil rights organizations ought to worry us. The left is growing. Churches, political parties, and economics are all skewed to the left. But the right has not been able to mount a counteroffensive against this shift. We protested, but the protest often contributes to the shift, because the right ends up adopting the tactics and talking points of the left. But how can we know if we are shifting to the left if we do not know who we are? Who are those on the left and what defines the right? Do we truly know how to delineate the two groups, or are conservatives the people who protests the progressive left? Over time our minds have become infected with patterns and habits inherited from the left. When looking for an identity, we often adopt the narratives of the left. Most of those on the right can even be heard demanding freedom. But where does freedom take us if God is in charge? Because we cannot be totally free, so we have become supporters of democracy. Christians are willing to compromise with Satan if he has more followers than God. Perhaps Christians feel Christianity is oppressive. But if you feel the authority of God is oppressive, you think like a liberal. Authority is only oppressive if it is imposed. But God created truth. If you find God oppressive, you must also find truth oppressive. To obey God is nothing more than doing what is logical, moral, and true. If you had the chance to be guided by a supreme artificial intelligence, would you accept the offer? But you would like to be in control, but you are with God also. Just as is the case with AI, you can follow the advice of God, or not. In both cases you are the one who must suffer the consequences of not following good advice. What advantage is there to be guided by your own mortal mind, in contrast to following the instructions of a supreme intellect? Indeed, if this supreme intelligence created reality, how is one free to make their own choices, without conflicting with the truth? There can be only one source of apathy, and that is the frustration of wants. There are two responses. People can reduce their wants to a more reasonable level, or they can look for better delivery methods. The East and generally reduced wants to what the system can provide. The East looks to increase their gratitude for what they have, to reduce the disparity between desire and satisfaction. the West has generally taken a different approach. The West have freed up paths to supply. We went rapidly from traditional subsistence agriculture, to serfdom, to home industry, mercantilism, and finally to capitalism. At each stage our ability to satisfy wants increased. But there was a parallel path that was also created. This is the path of artificial wants. Capitalism did not just supply wants, it created them. But it does this for a reason. We will not pay someone money to get what we want unless we are artificially induced to. Imagine if we all ate natural foods, that is, things that were close to the farm. Imagine how short the supply lines would be. Not only would many manufacturing processes would shut down, but all those who administrate, govern, and help in the logistics of this system would also not be needed. This is not just a saving of money, it is freeing up more hands to make things. Either we would get more real wants satisfied or we would get more of our time back so we could supply our wants ourselves. But Christians seem to think God is incapable of circumventing the Babylonian delivery system and its reliance on steep gradients of power. Yet, the problem did not exist in the tribal system of informal exchanges. People created what they needed and insured against future need by sharing what surplus they had. But this system did not satisfy all wants. For example, housing and medical care was primitive. However, instead of building house churches, elites created a gatekeeper system in which they permitted the provision of wants, but only if they got to share in the benefits. This created what is known as liabilities. The state became a silent partner in all commercial establishments and transactions. The question is, ought Christians expect the system created by Satan to be responsive to the needs and wants of the church? The church is a delivery system that shortens supply lines. Living in faith is to live in trust, which in economics means to live in a way in which accounts can be reconciled. If we know everyone will pay their own way, we can trust the system and those in it. Mistrust and fear are the result of knowing there is a risk of others defaulting on their obligations. If we wish to trust others, we must work within the church and trade and do business with those of a similar faith. There has to be an accounting or faith will turn to fear and fear may become hate. We are the church, this is our identity. Christians are not individuals, we are the church of Christ. We are a body of believers. As the church we serve one another in faith. This is who we are. Because we have faith, our engagement is direct and unregulated by the state. By reducing or eliminating the state and its regulatory activities, more resources are available to provide for the church's needs. The key to understanding the difference between the church and Babylon is the logical costs of each model or delivery vehicle. The church uses direct pathways and short supply lines. The state regulates and monitors, which increases costs to a significant degree. Logistics is the study of delivery methods. To transform the conventional methods of providing for wants into the biblical model, focus on shortening supply lines and weeding out waste. Not only will you increase your ability to provide for wants, you will find a Christian identity emerging.